What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Welcome, everybody. Scott DeLong here with the CEO Podcast. Vince and I are doing a reboot. We did 100 episodes originally in 5 seasons, which was awesome. We took a break. We're coming back for a limited series that we're doing this all about leadership, right? My name's Scott DeLong, as I said, and you can get a hold of me at scott@leadtogoals.com, or you can check out my website at leadtogoals.com. That's lead with the number 2, goals.com.
Vince Moiso here with the CEO Podcast as well. As always, with Scott, pleasure to be here with you. And yeah, I agree, Scott. It was nice to come back for this limited series. Hard to believe we're already on episode 5 of this series, and we've had a lot of fun previous discussions around this leadership at the crossroads. You can reach me at vince@visbiz.us. You can check out my website at visbiz.us, or just check out vincemoiso.com. I'll get you to the same place. What do we got for today, Scott?
So episode 5 is all about what's next.
Yeah.
It's the CEO's role in the new economy. And we're discussing the current climate and how leadership is handling it. So why don't you take a minute and define that climate, or parts of the climate anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, right, for leadership this year, and how things are certainly getting handled. And so I think if you look at AI disruption, right, are you leveraging AI in your business, or has it passed you by? You just don't know what to do with it. And if you're not leveraging it in your business, why not? What about remote working? So, we're past COVID, kind of. It's still looming out there. But I think what the residual of what COVID did for businesses is we've got this huge or much larger remote workforce than ever. And then I personally know there's a lot of businesses that are pulling people back physically into the office. So has that changed for you? Where are you at with that? Where do you stand with that? Are you asking those questions? How about the talent pool and the generational differences that we're getting?
Yeah.
As you've got this young group, this young age demographic that's coming into the workforce, and then you've got this Gen Z as a part of your workforce, and then you've got your Gen Xers, and there's just this
And above.
and above.
I'm in the above category.
Well, but I would say, Scott, there's just this eclectic mix of generations that are separated by large gaps, and it's created interesting dynamics in the workplace. And is that all the CEO's responsibility? I mean, what is at this point, how deep is the CEO really going? I guess it depends on the size of your organization, but that's the real question, right?
So I think the role of the CEO has shifted. It's no longer just about the chief problem solver or the guy who jumps in and puts out all the fires, and I mean the approach may have worked in the past, but it limits the growth. It limits the opportunities for others. In fact, so when you talk about generational differences, just want to hit on that. You talk about 4 generations that are actively in the workforce, and sometimes 5.
Yeah.
There's still some of the silent folks out there that maybe they're the chairman or the chairman emeritus now, but they're still actively involved. That grandparent that may have started the company. So there's a lot to think about, and I hope we dig into that a little bit. But the value of the CEO in today's world is really about culture, about developing people, about creating the environment where others are there to solve problems and innovate. It is, if you're past the startup stage, it is no longer just about you, but about how you can get things done through and with others.
So I'm hearing you say the CEO is the visionary for the most part, and may not be the one that executes all that, but is staying focused. And I would argue.
I love it when you argue with me.
Well, I would say that the fundamentals are still pretty important. So as you talk about growth or scaling of the business, protecting the stability of the business, meaning, capital, finance,
Sure.
protecting the bottom line, staying focused on EBITDA, profitability. I mean, to me, those are absolute non-negotiables for the CEO or the president, for that matter, of the business. And whether we're talking about disruption, AI, things like that, that can pull leaders into what I would call distractions. And I'm not saying that a CEO's responsibility isn't to help that business adapt to a changing market and changing technologies, changing environments, just talking about generational talent, things like that. Yeah, okay, you have to know and understand that stuff is out there, and still stay focused on the fundamentals.
All right, I'm good with that, but I'm talking about past the startup stage, past the $5 million stage, to the 10, to the 20, to the 30. It is my hope that I have now hired people that are smarter than me at those specifics. The chief sales officer, revenue officer,
Sure.
the chief financial officer, or even a controller, if you will, that has more knowledge about the finances than I do. That doesn't mean I have to take my hand off the wheel.
Yeah.
I still believe that the CEO is like the conductor of the orchestra.
Sure.
But I got a first violinist and a second violinist, and I got the trombone guy over there that are better and have more expertise than I have at that. And that's why I say that the CEO is there to develop the vision and maintain the culture.
Well,
as the primary responsibilities.
My coach was hard on me and held me accountable to the fact that I better know my numbers, and I better know what's going on in the business, especially in that regard. And that I am a driver of revenue. And whether I have a chief revenue officer or not, I need to have at least a touch on my top 5 customers. Like, that relationship still has to be there. There still has to be that conduit where they've got access to the top leaders of the business. There's no question. You have to maintain that connection. That's my opinion. I was taught that. I believe that. And there is a method of where all of a sudden, we talked about in the previous podcast, extreme ownership, and I'm a Jocko Willink fan, and I love that book, and I believe in extreme ownership. So, well, what does that mean? Is that if something goes wrong, it's my fault. It's as an executive leader in the business, it's my fault, and I have to control that chaos. So if things feel like chaos, that's on me. That's totally on me, and none of the rest matters as far as I'm concerned.
Well, maybe. I think some of the rest does matter, and I do think that people have to have functional responsibilities, and I'm hoping that I'm hiring people that are smarter than me at those functional responsibilities, as I've said, and I've got to conduct the orchestra, but I need to get out of their way as well.
Sure.
It is on me. The buck stops here. I get all that. I had a former client that said to me, I need to learn more about my financials. And my response was just the opposite. You need to have a working knowledge of that, certainly.
Yeah.
However, I don't want you wasting your time learning more about that, because that's not your strong suit.
Sure.
It's not where you're good. It's not where you're going to be driving the success of the business. We got a guy for that.
Yeah.
We got a gal for that.
Yeah.
That can do those things much better than you can, as long as you understand the language that person is telling you.
Yeah.
And that can help you guide the organization in the way that you want it guided. I don't know that the CEO has to be in the weeds.
Well, there's a lot of trust that has to get extended for that. I think probably one of the most sensitive issues or topics that you could bring up with an entrepreneur is finance.
Yeah.
And I've met many that I've coached or just that I know. Some understand finance, some not so much. And they still want to. I want to, because it's really hard to just go, cool, I'm going to trust somebody else with that level of responsibility, the finance.
Go back to Reagan, trust but verify, right? So I said having a working knowledge of something. Yeah. Yes, you need to trust. That's incumbent upon us if we want to be in a leadership role, that we need to be able to trust. If we can't trust somebody, they shouldn't be in that position.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you got to verify. So the trust but verify, as Reagan said about the former USSR, right? That you could trust them, but you got to verify what they're saying is accurate. So yeah, certainly need a working knowledge.
Yeah.
But being in the weeds, not necessary. I just don't think it is. There may be some functional expertise that I have elsewhere, though. For instance, client facing. If I'm the face of the organization, and I can be the person that's out there doing the PR and then meeting with the top 5 customers with the appropriate salespeople with me, great. That's wonderful. But if I'm an introvert, right, and I'm not really good with people, then maybe I want to stay out of that customer-facing role. So that, remember what we talked about earlier, episode 1, the answer to the best answer to most questions is it depends. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, let's get back to this and you said it earlier, you were hoping we were going to get back to this. So I'm just going to get us back to this discussion around remote working. So I'm seeing, and I've got a couple different peer groups that I'm involved in, especially industry peer groups. And I'm hearing from a lot of owners that are taking this old school stance, and I'm using the word old school intentionally,
Jamie Dimon did it.
Is like, I'm going to bring them back to the workplace, and I want them here, and I'm going to force that. And I think that's going to get some backlash. I think that's going to hurt some businesses to take that strong a stance. And here's why. I think there's a couple reasons that I think the introduction to this option for remote working was pretty incredible for me personally and for the business, because I think it opens up the talent pool incredibly.
Sure.
So now let me be clear. There are certain positions that lend themselves to being remote, and there are other positions that obviously can't function remotely.
If you got to touch products, you can't do it from your home.
There you go. Yeah. So the example would be your operations, right? So if you're in distribution and manufacturing, okay, if you're going to manufacture, you got to be in the plant. If you're going to distribute and you've got this operational component to your business, you got to be in the warehouse or wherever that is, right? The distribution center. So that touch component is unavoidable. Those people need to be. Now, as you start to expand to customer service roles, sales roles, marketing roles, more administrative roles can absolutely, even accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, these type of positions can absolutely be remote. Now, there's this strong argument about culture and developing culture, face-to-face versus remote. So I would argue, in my direct experience, we've been able to find some incredible talent by just expanding to offering certain positions remote. And positions that we want to be at the office, we're hiring specifically to be at the office, and we're just making that clear. Those that are hybrid positions, we're offering for those to be hybrid. And we found a lot of success in that, because if somebody only has to be at the office, call it 3 days out of the week, and they can work from home 2 days out of the week, we're finding that group is immensely productive. And that's because we've set up the processes to keep them insanely connected with the business. And I don't want to take up the time. This isn't the podcast for that.
Nope.
We talked about that in a previous podcast. I can't remember if it was season 4 or season 5, but we talked specifically around the case study of what we've done as a business to really connect those remote employees.
Let me pick on a word that you used about when you were talking about others, not your own company.
Yeah.
Those that are forcing, right?
Yeah.
Inspiring, not forcing. Back to the leadership piece. Let's turn the topic from remote work, because that's an issue, and we want to challenge people to think through how they're handling that. But let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics, is the generational differences.
All right.
4, maybe 5 generations in a workforce.
Yeah.
We, older people, tend to have a view that the younger people are lazy, entitled. There's all kinds of words that I've heard used with these folks.
Yeah.
My position is just the opposite of that, though. I don't think they are. I think that these folks want to work. They just don't want to work for you. I'm not talking about Vince here. I'm talking about you, the guy that's making the decisions, doing all that. We need to be flexible and to understand the differences between the generations. And my favorite example is this. So you've got these Gen Z folks out there, and you put all these words on them. I'm teaching again back in the university, and I love it. I like the access to knowledge that I have now that I didn't have just 2 years ago because of these young people and their thoughts and their ideas. I'm not saying they're all developed and they're all right, but what I'm saying is that they're different, and it's good for me to hear.
Yeah.
So I need these young people. I need them for another reason. Here I am, 65 years old now, know everything about everything, like smartest guy in the room, all that nonsense. If 53% of my workforce is millennial or Gen Z, can't you extrapolate that to say that probably 53% of my customer base is as well? And do you really want me, a boomer, making the decisions about our future products, services, offerings, when I have this talent pool that already knows what they want, that I can tap into? Like, it's a two-way street. There's certainly things that I can teach these young people. Absolute. Communications, number one thing that I can teach them. And it's incumbent upon me to do so. But there's so much that I can learn from them as well. I am so much in favor of this diversity in age, diversity in all aspects, certainly, but this multi-generational workforce. There's so many benefits for us to embrace that today than we think about because of all the negative connotations that we lay upon these young people.
Well, we talked about this previously, Scott, and I think you're right in the sense of, I think this younger generation, I think they're hard workers. I think they've got great work ethic.
Yeah.
And
they don't know what they don't know, but they're willing.
No, they're very willing. I think the work ethic, they understand they're coming out of college, they're getting jobs right away. They're not picky about what the job selection is. Right. They just understand that they have to get out in the workforce. They have to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them. They have to get that experience to build their resume. They understand the commitment to all of that. They're on time. They're, I think all of that is there. My daughter is an example of that, man. She works so hard. Her work ethic, I do not question her work ethic in the least bit. She has great work ethic. She works very hard. She's on time. She's a great employee in that way. And her expectations of what she should be getting from that is just different. It's different than Gen X, right?
Yeah.
Like we're salt of the earth, it was like, I don't know how many times as a kid I fell down.
Well, you guys think you're the
knee.
best generation.
I was eating dirt. Well, we are the best generation. So it's
there's
cool.
some debate about that.
We're very thought-provoking, independent.
There you go.
And we most of us make the best entrepreneurs, Scott. That's for sure.
No fault to the Gen X generation at all. All they have is positives about them. Let's go with
what though? To your point though, is like, am I the one that should be making decisions around, how we're selling and communicating to these other generations? No, I shouldn't be, because I can't relate. I don't have, when you were Gen X, there was a lot of hardcore things that we were just, our parents kicked us out the door and said, get outside, go outside. I mean, I was laughing because I was just talking about this to somebody the other day. I mean, my mom was dropping my friend and I off at 10 years old at Disneyland, and, we're at 9 a.m. and she said,
Wild Rivers was our babysitter for 5 kids.
I'll be back here at 7 p.m. to pick you up. And no one, I don't know a single parent that does that.
That won't happen anymore.
That does that today.
But before we're going to run out of time pretty quick here, but I want to talk about AI, but maybe the hottest topic going on right now too, and throw some questions out about AI so that we don't lose that, because we've talked about the remote work concerns, we talked about generational differences. What about AI?
Yeah.
What's the CEO's role there? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, the CEO, really the leaders in the business, it's not just the CEO, but the leaders in the business have to be paying attention to what's going on, right? You can't ignore it. Right. I mean, that's the point. Like, even all three of those topics, you can't ignore it. You can't force it. So you were talking about that earlier. Yep. It can't be forced. Right. It can't be ignored. Right? These things aren't going to go away. People's desire to work remotely and have that as a part of their schedule, not going away, right? The generational thing and the different workability with the diversity of just the generational gap of employees, not going away, right? It can't be ignored, can't be forced. AI, right? Highly disruptive to a lot of industries, to a lot of businesses. The answer is it depends.
There you go.
Right? And it depends on the industry that you're in. Are you a service business? Are you a product business? All these types of things. We're still learning how to leverage AI.
Mm-hmm.
We're a product driven business. I also have a service business that I'm leveraging AI for already in a big way. And I understand like the application of that in a service business is going to be a little bit easier to figure out than it is in the product business right now. Now, we've got to figure it out. So we're not ignoring it, and we're using it from a marketing perspective. We're using it for communication perspective. We're leveraging it in any way that we can right now.
Running social media through AI tools.
Trying, yeah. So like all of that's in discovery, right? We're in that discovery process. So I would challenge any business right now as we talk about all three of those things, whichever is the hot button for you, can't force it, can't ignore it.
What questions should we be asking? We're at the end of our time here on this podcast. We want to leave the viewers with some questions that they should internally take a look at, whether it's self or organization. Give me your top couple questions.
Well, yeah. So which one of these is the hot button for you? So we talked about three topics, and then what are you doing about it? And then ultimately, who's responsible for that? So what I have found amongst leadership, whether we're talking the CEO or the executive team, whatever, someone has to own these things. Right. You may not be doing all the things, but someone has to own it. So if it's not owned, like AI or remote working or any of that, like if someone just doesn't own
and
that,
we assume everyone's doing their thing
and everything, it just goes
happening.
out in the ether and nothing ever really happens.
That's
so again, this just goes back to what I was saying before: can't force it, can't ignore it.
There you go. Wonderful. Well, here we are, end of episode 5 already.
Yeah.
Like quick reboot. This has been great. I've been enjoying it. Thank you all for listening. Ask yourself the tough questions. Get with your teams and start formulating some of those answers.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate you sticking with us. And stay tuned in a couple weeks. Our last episode of this limited series will be released, and then we'll see what happens after that. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.